Serena, welcome to the show. You are one of my most interesting friends in terms of having such a varied career, honestly, more so than mine, which is always really fun to encounter. And for those of you listening, Serena is a PhD architect, a serial entrepreneur, an equity advisor, and an author. So I think this is going to be a really, really interesting conversation.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me, Jake, and thank you so much for that intro. I have to say, I think you're the most overqualified mental performance coach I've seen out there, and I'm not referring to people I know, I'm referring to people I see online, and I really hope there'll be more people learning about you.
Thank you so much. And it's really, really kind. And I want to jump straight into it. So how does one go about selling their company?
I love this question. So it really depends on, first, what we have to understand is that businesses have seasons. So they're called the business life cycles. So you have it's the beginning, and then you have the early growth, then you have the rapid growth, mature growth, and it kind of sort of plateaus. So you could basically sell either parts of it or the entire thing in any stage of the business. And I guess this is a moment in which we should probably distinguish between a business and a startup. Because most of the, yes, most of the people believe that they're kind of like two different things, that startups are these things from Silicon Valley that are founded by people wearing sandals, dorks and stuff. It has to have AI in it and things like this. But in reality, the difference between a business and a startup is the fact that a business is judged by how it makes money. And that means that the services can be diversified, and, there's a cash flow that you have to, a balance sheet that you have to pay attention to. A startup, however, the whole idea is to solve one specific problem, and it doesn't have to be profitable for a very long period of time. And to be completely honest, this is applicable for businesses as well. So you can start selling stake in your business from the very beginning. All you have to do, and actually I highly recommend this, because if you start selling equity on your idea, you start having stakeholders from the very beginning, which is the ultimate market validation on your idea. You understand? So yes, we either have like these pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B funding rounds for startups for when they need to burn the cash because they're not profitable, because they develop a minimum viable product, or then they kind of carve out the market that they address. And then later on, we can either sell stake as into fund operations, like we usually people do that between 10 and 25% of the company they sell to get some extra cash to pour in the fuel mix for the engine to achieve escape velocity. They can have a partial exit, which is like 50% of the company, in which that means that the founder himself kind of loses, like doesn't have majority and therefore doesn't have control. Or we can have the total exit, which can either be a strategic majority buyout, like somebody wants to buy your tech or your client base, or you're just sick of it and you want to sell it to private equity. You don't want to see it anymore, which is also a case. So you can,
And
in any
I just
stage.
want to kind of jut in there because I think that, by the way, you like, this is the reason I wanted to have this conversation. You're so kind of nutrient rich in terms of what you understand, like with this. Obviously, I know it's your full time thing, but so the way that I want to go back through that kind of in reverse order. So the you're sick of your business and you just sell to private equity. Is that, from my understanding, is typically where private equity will buy the business as a whole. It's already kind of functional, it's already operational, and they probably, if it's large enough, will break it down into its component parts and then, either recycle or sell off parts. That's how private equity typically works. Is that right?
No, not necessarily. So, like, the thing is, the I guess the comment section on social media posts shows a lot of people talking about big bad BlackRock. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're so
Yeah.
evil and stuff. Like, they destroy businesses and stuff like that. Well, no, the reality is, when people sell to private equity, they first have to demonstrate the fact that that thing can actually make money. Like, first of all, that there's a solid customer acquisition, that there's that LTV on CAC ratio that is absolutely pristine. They have to show obviously a monthly recurring revenue, an annual recurring revenue, and they have to demonstrate an investment return rate, an IRR. And the thing about those is, when private equity buys you out, they install their own management, because, like, this is the case of the Hormozis, for example. They buy businesses that are stagnating because the founder is the bottleneck most of the time, they because it's just a business grows as big as the founder's vision, you know?
Yes,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
they buy businesses, and then they install their own management, and they also put them in this network of other businesses, so they kind of integrate horizontally. And the best example that I can give is when you think about an ideal customer. So you have the matcha Pilates mommy that also probably has a pet, like a small dog. And so that means that that customer you can address with, like, pet grooming, a matcha cafe, and a
Correct,
Pilates
yeah.
studio, you know?
Right.
And that
Okay.
ultimately raises the LTV of one unit of human, because I don't know if you've noticed this, but they don't make as much humans as they used to, especially in the Western countries.
That's a really funny way of putting it, but yeah. Okay, so most private equity acquisitions fall into kind of one, I suppose that's kind of one horizontal as opposed to, well, I suppose you get equities or funds, I don't know what they're called, but that fall into verticals, and then some that fall into horizontals where they're trying to reclaim every aspect of that purchaser's life. Well, not every aspect, but as many as possible. And then the other way around, it will be to gain as many stages of the product as possible. Is that right?
That's more the case of a strategic majority buyout, in the sense that another company buys your stuff. So you and me, we live here in Dubai, and real estate is a big thing. And the biggest developers are completely vertically integrated, because they've realized that if I don't if one aspect of the business is doing very well, I will give you the example of Bengati, who is an architect. He's like, I think he's 30 or even younger than that. It's insane.
I
And he
think he's
has
one of
like,
the youngest billionaires. I think he's
yes,
33, 31, 33, and he's worth, yeah, because he was on School of Hard Knocks. Sorry, continue,
really.
please.
I love him because he's so transparent about everything. He
Yeah.
said, look, I leverage my degree. I really like drawing buildings and things. And at one point, I managed to to become a developer. And so I would build my own buildings. And at one point, you know what? We acquired, like, they either did mergers or acquisitions, or they just founded new companies, like the concrete manufacturer, the guys who do the scaffolding. They are perfectly vertically integrated, because that really gives them the edge, the competitive edge, because it's way cheaper, but also they have the entire control of the supply chain. So they're not going to ring up somebody and say, hey, where's my scaffolding? I don't know, it's going to be there in like 3 to 6 weeks. No, because it's them as well. And in this case, they can also outsource. So the business itself, if it's vertically integrated, it becomes really flexible, because, you can give some scaffolding to somebody else. It's fine. It's not an issue. But PE goes horizontal, because it's equity. That's it. And, like, business integration happens vertically, and that's a very valuable lesson for, like, all of us
That
as business
that's so
owners.
interesting because honestly, and thank you so much because that clarity, I've always understood, horizontal and vertical within a business context. Because obviously, some businesses will prefer to go one way or the other. I mean, I guess sometimes they go both if they get big enough. But yeah, Bingati, Imar, like perfect examples. So in the UAE, there's massive, massive developers. Imar is, at least in Dubai, is probably the most. Well, it's not probably; it's the most prolific. I know that. But yeah, that makes a huge amount of sense. And obviously, what the scale affords you is the ability to buy above and below, so that you can just effectively, trim down the margins and guarantee demand supply for your demand. So private equity is more horizontal, and acquisitions, mergers are more vertical. That makes sense. And mergers, is that when two companies kind of mush together, they share all of the, so like, keeping with the developer theme, obviously Dubai Properties and Meras merged, didn't they, a few years ago?
Hmm.
So they just share all of their assets, and they're now they're now the same thing effectively. Is that right?
Yes, I have to say I'm not familiar with that merger.
Oh,
I
okay.
am familiar with one from back home. So my mom used to be, she's turning 70 this year. Shout out, mom.
Happy
She used
birthday,
to
man.
be, happy birthday, mom. Yeah, I'll bring her here. It's going to be awesome. She used to be the general manager of the National Stock Exchange. And the way she got that position was from was a consequence of a merger because there were two stock exchanges at the time. Like this was, I don't know, early 2000s, I think. There was like it was exactly like the New York Stock Exchange and Nasdaq. So they had the Bucharest Stock Exchange and Razdak, and the R stands for Romania.
Yeah.
And at one point they merged. We wouldn't say that they one acquired the other one, but like I think they still operate as two separate markets. Because you have like the main one with like the three letters and the one with the four letters. I don't really know how it is nowadays, but like that's an example of a merger in which the management also kind of merged as well. But they decided in the deal, because the deal is the most important part of all of these things, they decided who's going to be the alpha of this thing. So we're not going to buy it, but we're bigger and our management is better and like we're
Mm.
state subsidized. So, we win.
Yeah. So I suppose it's more let's work together and pool our resources as opposed to I am going to absorb you and then basically, I suppose it's a similar enough outcome, but it's just whoever's more in control of it. And typically, like you said, for example, when Meta bought Instagram, they bought all of the code and etc. And
Yes.
they fully reintegrated it into the kind of Meta ecosystem or the
Yes.
metaverse.
Yes. That
If
was
you
a
want to say
buyout.
that,
And that when they did it with
yeah,
WhatsApp as well.
of course, yeah,
Remember when they
WhatsApp.
did it with WhatsApp? Yeah.
Yeah, this feels like forever ago. So cool. So and those kind of deals can occur at any stage, and I suppose it kind of gets balanced on the scale of the earlier it happens, the more you're giving away, but as an investor, the more risk you're taking on. Is that roughly true?
I suppose that's a very interesting take. But, the risk was calculated, but boy, am I bad at math. So, like, I guess the best, what, an example that I really, really love of this is when Google bought YouTube. Like, I keep talking about that. It's in my book as well. I just love that example because, first of all, you can see really, really early YouTube videos with the devs. They're like four guys sitting there saying, "Oh my God, there's only 50 videos on this platform." Like, that's the issue because nobody wants to use this platform. So, therefore, you have no reason to get into this. And I don't remember, maybe this was like 2003 or earlier. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, Google bought YouTube specifically for the technology. Like, of course, it was a video platform and stuff. I think they were already coding. They were finding ways for search engine optimization that would allow for them to listen in on what's discussed on the videos and stuff. I think they were
Hmm.
already experimenting with that. But ultimately, Google Ads was the main reason for that. So they needed
Ah,
a video vector for the ads because, the Google ads on when you Google something, they're not as interesting because they're not
yeah.
as vibrant and stuff. But when people actually lock in to watch a video and then they get interrupted by those ads, there you have it, proper advertising.
Yeah. And I
So I would,
suppose that came in at a similar time to the slow suffocation of classic mainstream media television. And
yeah,
I think there was obviously it was right time, right place. It was obviously strategic from Google, but I'd probably be right in hazarding a guess that there's more ad revenue in YouTube than all of the like classic cable networks combined now, because I mean, I certainly wouldn't be far off. I think making that assumption. I mean, also the Google YouTube Premium, I think is genius because like I historically less so now, but predominantly consume on YouTube, and for me, it was a big enough problem that I was wasting X amount of minutes a day for the sake of exchanging a few cents a day for YouTube Premium. And I think more and more as people move towards desiring authenticity, YouTube is going to continue to go from strength to strength to strength. I mean, there was that YouTuber, I can't remember his name, but credit to him. He privately produced, filmed, and released a private movie. I think his name's like Mikhail something. Anyway, so it's like a huge thing because it's one of the first ever privately produced, filmed, directed, and released films that's ever grossed in the box office. I think after a couple of weekends, it was at $10 million. But for something that he did on his own, it's called Iron Lung, the film, and it's a really terribly interesting case study in film. Um,
I've heard about
anyway,
it.
I,
I didn't
I
know it was that
digress.
good.
But the quality, he's a YouTuber, but realistically, he's a indie filmmaker, and he's just been posting it on YouTube. So it's really, really interesting. I can't. We're going off on a tangent. I don't want to tangent too far. So coming back to preparing a company to sell. So obviously you've got these stages. They're pretty conceivable. You've got the start, and I suppose what's the difference in mentality between a startup and between just an early stage business? Say one of your businesses early on and a typical stereotypical like startup in Silicon Valley, for example. What are the differences?
Profitability.
Yeah,
Profitability is the main difference. That's the thing. Because like there I guess in startups, because there's this whole, you're inventing something, right? So when you invent something, there's you don't know. Like you don't even have the thing yet. You only have a vague idea, and you need some money from people who believe in the idea to try and build it and stuff. And then after that thing is built, first you like give it to some friends and family and stuff, and you amount to 150 users, let's say, with unique data points over like the course of 6 to 12 months. And after that, you kind of think, all right, cool. So now let's start to carve out a market for this. Like who exactly, now that we know the strong suits
proof of
of this
concept.
product,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And all of these things means that, it's only testing, it's a lab. So you can't really judge it on how well it's businessing, the
Okay,
business
so
isn't businessing.
I think it's a really important distinction. So a startup is typically where you forego profitability for an extended period of time when you're pretty much relying on investor capital or your own, which I suppose your own would be way more compelling, but it's a pretty rare situation that someone can be in.
Bootstrapping. No, that's not true. Many people bootstrap because you know what? Convincing people to actually fund your idea is salesmanship. And as you know, it's salesmanship is not easy. Like most people don't really know how to sell. They're not really comfortable with that. So they would rather bootstrap their idea first. So they would be comfortable enough to show investors, hey, look, this is working. Like, for example, I'm advising a startup that has been bootstrapping for the past 4 years, I think. And all the profit has been reinvested for scaling the whole time, reinvested for scaling continuously. And they built that thing from nothing. And they, like, the founder keeps telling me, no, I don't want to ask for money yet because I'm not ready. So he wasn't really running it as a startup. He was running it as a business. And he said, no, I don't think it's time now to ask for money. I'm like, bro, you, you could have asked for money 3 years ago, like after 1 year of like demonstrating, like proof of concept.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously this is so founder dependent, isn't it? Or senior management, co-founding team, whatever, dependent. And it's this is probably where I know that a lot of startup founders will often really like go out to try and find an experienced co-founder who has actually exited either once or twice or multiple times, probably just to borrow that certainty and that experience, won't they?
To borrow the talent of deal making, I'm gonna I'm
And
gonna quote
network, I
the,
suppose.
and the network, of course. But like the thing is, the success of most businesses, I'm sorry to say this, like maybe this is cynical, but it's not about the money and it's not about the strategy. It's only about the deals, the quality of the deals that you make along the way. Because, well, we hope for the best in deals, but we're supposed to prepare for the worst in deals. And I myself have been a victim of bad deals because I figured, oh, these are my friends. I trust these friends and whatever. But it's not their fault that, we go different paths. But what I'm trying to say, what's most important that founders must learn is how to make a deal. And a proper deal is made by making a value proposition to potential investors, like a proper value proposition. You say, hey, look, this is my idea. This is my market. This is the annual revenue that I'm pretty sure I can have. So that means that this company is valued at this amount. And so I will give you 10% of it if you give me 300K, you know,
Yeah.
and I
So
can
like
guarantee that.
Dragon's Den, Shark Tank, but in real life.
Yes.
Okay. And from your experience and your recommendation, is it because I feel like obviously, having started multiple businesses now, I feel like I couldn't even imagine, building something to sell. But I suppose it gets to a point where you start building stuff to sell. Maybe it's really individually dependent, or when you start building something, is it really important to know whether you build to sell, or should you always build with the intention that you might sell?
I will make an analogy for the engineer in you. And we will be discussing the commercial airplane, the Boeing 737. So there's several generations for the Boeing 737. Like the original series, I don't know, 100 to 300 was drawn up on paper in the 1950s and 1960s. This meant that it was operating in the 1970s, and I think there might still even be some in the air. The
Probably,
problem
yeah.
with those, the problem with those is that because they weren't really experienced in, commercial aircraft, the maintenance was not designed. And that means the aircraft itself was not modular. Like you could see, I stripped a Boeing 737-300 of the paint, and I could see that the screws were not aligned. They were going like this. It was all artisanal and stuff. And you try to service that airplane. And like the thing about building a sellable business from ground up is that it's supposed to be modular. It's supposed, because then you pay attention to all of these things. So we're trying to build like a Boeing 737-900 from the very beginning,
Okay.
It's not
Yeah,
artisanal anymore.
that makes complete sense. When you're building with that in mind, modular, what does modular look like? Is that your sales team looks different to your let's put this to a hypothetical example so that we can start to really like understand it, because this is so interesting for me. I will hold my hands up and say I've never really understood how people sell businesses apart from maybe brick and mortar businesses, because obviously I know that a lot of, specifically in the UK, a lot of businesses get bought out by private equity just because they're on like a 300-year lease in the middle of Mayfair and things like that. Um, or like they own,
That's
because
awesome.
yeah, well, or they own the building in a really desirable location. I know things like that happen. So yeah, let's use a hypothetical example. You can choose whichever type of business you like.
We're
And
doing coaching. We're doing
okay,
high level coaching. That's what I want to
okay,
do today.
okay, made for more high
Made for
performance.
more. Yes.
Okay, let's use that as a hypothetical.
Okay, yes. So first of all, I love specifically love your coaching business because you are overqualified. It's insane. Like the level of certifications that you have, I've never seen anything so holistic, because it's not only about mindset, it's literally proper business acumen as well, because you're working with business owners, like you're working with high level entrepreneurs, but it's also brain anatomy. Like it's crazy. It's the most holistic coach type of coaching I've ever seen. And that is your
Thank you so
moat,
much.
Jake. Like that is your moat. Seriously. That is the moat that Warren Buffett talks about. So that thing, I would totally invest in that thing for sure.
Thank you so much. This is
Just
very quickly turning into just a pitch. Everyone invest. It's not even available to invest in.
yes.
But yeah,
So
anyway.
there's some questions that we need to ask, like before, like is before a business is worth investing in, or like start selling equity in it, or and like first of all, is why now? Why is now a good moment? But first of all, now is a good moment because we're going through a renaissance in which everybody understands that we are more than just our minds, we are more than just our bodies, and we are way more than just our jobs. Because honestly, I love the fact that we've unlocked this beautiful potential of the network to serve people from all over the world. I think that's absolutely beautiful. I don't think it's dystopian at all, but that makes us all business owners. And it also unlocked our understanding of what it really takes to own a business, because it's not education, it's not even ambition, it's just putting your whole self out there for everyone to see and asking them, how do you like this? And that requires a level of mindset which is not for everybody. It's not for everybody, and you should know, because you work with your clients and stuff, and like, they always, I'm guessing they always hit a wall, you know?
100%.
So
Everyone hits a ceiling, and that's universal. And it's interesting, actually, you said earlier about how founders, the company will grow to the level of the founder. And I literally could not agree more. This is literally what I do on a day-to-day basis. It's understanding actually where has the ceiling got to? And then there just comes a tipping point. As you know, you will have seen, you've experienced it yourself with the old business. It's like, do I want to continue down this path or this trajectory? Or do I actually want to kind of tangent from this and become someone different, or stay where I am? And then that's obviously the point at which you need to start to change leadership. But yeah, the bit I'm involved in is getting from, earlier stages up to that point, and then helping understand, are we at that point, or actually can we just keep going? But sorry.
I think that's beautiful. I think that's absolutely beautiful what you do. And the fact that you know that you can deliver this result to your clients specifically because you have all this education and all this practice as well, with prior customers and with you guys building your businesses as well. Like, that's not an easy thing, and you guys are younger than me, and you've achieved way more in terms of business, I have to say.
Thank
So
you very
yes,
much.
that is your moat. That is your moat. That's why I would choose to invest in Jake and not in like some other coach guy.
Tyler.
You know, Tyler, whatever. Yes, I hope Tyler is not a real person. I love you,
Yeah,
Tyler.
no,
You're
he's
doing
not.
very well.
I
But
don't know any Tylers personally, but
I'm going for Jake. That's remote. And now, so we've established why now, because now is the renaissance of people learning that mindset is very important for their business, and more business owners are here. And Jake is the specific person to do that. And one other question that we should ask Jake specifically is, what is your vision? Where do you see your specific business or your specific niche 10 years from now? How is it going to be relevant?
Hmm. So I'm going to answer this as kind of loosely as me. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail so that we can continue to move through this. But for me, my mission is to have impact at scale. So I think where I see that going is continuing on the path of having one-to-one support available, probably moving towards more organizational corporate support, because you can do one-to-many that way, and redistributing that through the kind of education arm of this podcast, my personal brand, continuing to do re-education that way. Honestly, unintentionally, probably not dissimilar to Alex Hormozi's current model, where they do one-to-many at the corporate trainings. He does do individual one-to-one support, just at a crazy cost, and then doing the wider mass education stuff through books, through trainings, YouTube, personal brand, things like that. So let's say that's the direction it's headed in.
I have to say that this ties into the why now. So 2025 Nobel Prize for Economics was granted to some people who demonstrated that economic growth is directly correlated with the level of innovation. And innovation has to be incentivized. And this is why we have the patent system, because if you're smart and you have a great idea and you implement it and you invent something, then you patent it, and then big companies, lease the right to use your genius idea, which I think is absolutely beautiful. And what that entails is competition, because I invent something and it's really cool and I have a customer base, and then you look at my thing and then you innovate it, and then people go to your thing and they pay a higher price for that. And that achieves economic growth, like for a country, for example. It's beautiful. So the smarter you are and the more innovative you are, the better everybody's doing. That's what they demonstrated. And one of the major aspects of that I guess, model or that environment, that business environment, is that we don't really have organizational structures that are like pyramids, like, with like a very narrow leadership with management and maybe some middle management and an army of executioners. We don't really have that anymore because we have AI now. Like, you don't need a junior analyst anymore. I'm sorry, but you don't need a junior analyst anymore for investment banking because you can just automate that stuff. And so the organization structure, instead of being pyramid, it's kind of turning into a diamond shape in which we have a lot more managers that have to take care of, yeah, they have to take into account a lot more aspects of the business. And some stuff is outsourced to, the third world or something, or it's like completely automated and that's it. And so there's even a bigger need of a leader coach in this case, because we're not, nobody's born a proper manager, nobody's born a proper leader, and you need a little bit of guidance on that. And like, because only time and like business mentorship can yield these types of results, you kind of need to start outsourcing some scientists related to that.
Yeah.
So yes, that's where I would see you and your business 10 years from now. Like, you specifically address scientifically how to build that broadening level of managers and leaders in companies, because, to lead that.
Because I suppose there's a deepening complexity of what's required, what leadership looks like. And I think I personally, my belief is that AI is done is basically shutting the door on non-creative pursuits. And I mean this not in like a everyone does art, everyone. I think there's creativity in literally anything, and it's the way in which you can apply your individual genius and your humanity to a problem to solve it. That's what I consider as creativity. So I think that's where the gap is really opening up. And I think a lot of the work that I end up doing now, using this as the case study, is on helping people understand how they can, you know, create space for that creativity and embrace that. Not only because it's fulfilling, but obviously because that's, where you're going to have the most impact. So that's a really interesting point. Okay, so I suppose at this stage we've established it is a model that is in a growing market. It's a model that has future demand, and I as the founder would have the vision to take it the distance. Now, what are the steps for becoming modular after that? Like, what does
Before
modular look
that,
like?
we have
Oh,
one more. We have one
okay.
more for this specific business, because this is very important. What do you know? This is the secret question. What do you know that other people don't?
Regarding to
Regarding
this,
your
mm,
macro vision, what do you know from your own experience that other
the
people don't?
individual needs to stay at the heart of all, like the individual that you're addressing, whether it's on a big scale, whether it's on, the individual manager scale, the individual company, sorry, at the biggest scale, the individual niche market, that needs to stay at the heart of the problem solving. That's the thing that's the hill I will die on, is that everything is a personal individual problem. There's no two solutions. There's no one solution that will work perfectly for multiple people. It has to look, even if it's economically, even if it's statistically the right thing, there's an element of feel, because we're human beings. So that needs to be observed. And you'll notice this, like, markets have like feelings, markets have vibes. And I think we need to really pay attention to that, because although there's transferable techniques, ad strategies, for example, can work across niches, but I think it really, really needs to be tailored, because that's what we're going to quickly lose if everyone just blanket starts going about introducing frameworks, introducing funnels, introducing AI, because it doesn't have the ability to individually tailor.
Jake, my friend, that is your core value and that is your edge. And welcome to the billion-dollar company that you're about to build. Seriously, because if this is the core value, then this is how we can start building this thing. I've heard Jeremy Haynes say at one point that they gave themselves permission to target a broader market, because they were using, I don't know, they were doing marketing at one point only for people who wanted to grow like their personal brand and stuff. And then they said, we reframed and give ourselves permission to use our talents and our skills to help other people from other sectors as well. And that's basically your value, because you understand that the individual lies in the middle of everything. Oh, that's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
This
And I think
this is
the other thing as well is I've obviously that's something intuitive to my core beliefs, but also that does scale forwards because there's always going to be individual needs. Medicine, for example, going forward, you can guarantee that one condition doesn't look the same for everyone going forwards in time because we're biological creatures. So I like to think of it as like that kind of blanket statement is going to be widely applicable as long as there's human beings involved.
Of course. Now more than ever, we yearn for that. That I believe so too. I believe so too. Okay, well, now that we have your core values established, now we can think about your MVP or your offer. And you already have an offer, but what you don't have yet is a product ecosystem. Because there is this thing called the ladders of wealth creation, in which you trade money for time, and then there's the productized service, and then you start having some other deliverables as well that are modular and things. So you design this whole thing, then you have a software, a platform and things. So think you kind of you're no longer time dependent on that. So we have your core offer, and then we start developing your product ecosystem, but we can't do that right now on this podcast. This is something that we build with our base clients, and we experiment and we see what they need. Some of them might need a little more help with their mindset. Some of them might need some literal exercises on to how to reintegrate themselves and put the individual in the middle, because it's weird because where most of us are all up in our heads and stuff, and we discombobulate, I think, is the best word for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And after we have this product ecosystem and we have a client base, and we've proven a normalized monthly revenue. I'm not going to say a stable monthly revenue, because sometimes you have high highs and sometimes you have low lows because you have offers, or I don't know, because it's August and
Or it's seasonal
people.
or whatever. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly. But we
yeah.
normalize the revenue. And we normalize the revenue. We already know how much the OPEX is, and now we can calculate the EBITDA.
Okay.
And
Tell
we
us about
look at
EBITDA.
the EBITDA, the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. In the case of services, there's not, if you don't have physical goods and stuff, we just say EBIT. we we don't say
EBIT.
duh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's basically revenue minus cost of delivery, and like it goes a little granular than that. It's the money making power of the business itself. And the value of the business is, yes, this EBITDA and the multiplier that you add. And the multiplier is nature specific of the business. Like in your case, because I could say it's highly scalable, because if you have your product ecosystem put in place, that means that you have some aspects of the deliverables that are infinitely scalable, because they are courses, books, groups. I would highly advise groups, by the way. Yeah, groups are really, because they're like just it's just like office hours. I don't know, office hours with Jake, weekly calls, and it's 9,000 a year to join on those calls. You know, things like that.
Okay.
For example,
Yeah.
this is just an example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this is the Jan Martel example, I believe. I think it's not even that expensive to have the group coaching for the entire year, and you meet other entrepreneurs in there as well. Anyway, yes, you have aspects of the business that are infinitely scalable, and that will raise your EBITDA multiple. But at the same time, there's some things that won't, that will kind of affect, because this business that you have is still founder dependent, because you're the face of the business, and Dan Martell is the face of his business. Yeah, okay, buy back your time, the book and stuff, whatever, but it's always going to be founder dependent. When things cease to be founder dependent, like one example is Tommy Hilfiger, who the business has been sold twice, I think. Like first he built it, and then he sold it, and then those other people sold it as well. There are many examples of business, like even Spanx, that lady who would cut her own um underwear and stuff and restitch it, and yeah, to make shapewear. That was also built on her personal brand. and she sold that again. That thing was sold several times by now. So
Mm.
you can eventually remove the founder from the product itself, and it's more about the messaging than anything, because as soon as you have the systems in place, because Jake, you already will have a product ecosystem. You will have some people in charge of the delivery. You will have some people, maybe you're going to outsource the marketing at that point, or maybe you'll have in-house marketing. It really depends on what you
And
want
is
to
this
do.
where it gets modular?
Yes, this is where it gets modular. Yes, yes. Because it becomes more and more complex. Like it becomes, there's no, I know all of the coaching businesses have this, it's the exact same model, right? Because they have some setters, some closers, there's DM setters, they have some people doing the copywriting, and it's more or less lean and stuff. But there is no product ecosystem there. It's just them. It's just them. When you remove them, there's no business, you know? So it's basically like glorified group chat, a really expensive chat. I don't know. Chat. Cam boy. I'm sorry. But yes,
No,
as
no,
soon
I,
as this
I
thing
understand. Yeah, because this is actually something I really firmly believe whenever I'm working with online service-based business like coaching. This is something I really believe is that it like the only way forward isn't just that. Uh, so yeah, I'm really staunchly in that camp of, because that, you're right. Like a lot of these businesses do look like that, and I think not everyone has to build their business like that. But I suppose you get this with new and emerging industries. The coaching industry, as we see it now, has only really existed for kind of like 8-ish years, give or take. And it's obviously developed very rapidly, and now it's starting to mature. But anyway, we digress.
But the truth is, it's a lovely business model because it's the absolute best way for the clients to get results. Don't
Yeah,
you think? Like the
100%.
coaching, I think that there's no scam involved. Like coaching specifically empowers the individual to achieve their own goals. If you outsource some stuff and you opt for a done for you and stuff, like of course you're not gonna be very pleased with the results, but that's on you. It's not on them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yes, I
and
believe the coaching model.
yeah, I think the thing with coaching as well, it massively comes down to personal branding in terms of the who is the individual operating the system, because it will be, regardless of what type of coaching, it will be a direct reflection of the founder. And I think this is where the founder can't really hide, in that you know the results that people are getting, what they associate with, will be a direct result of what you give a fuck about the most. And
Yes,
it always filters downhill
but
from
at
there.
the same time, Philip K. Dick, the author of it's not called Blade Runner. The book is called Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? So you don't know, Blade
No, no,
Runner, right?
yeah, I
Oh,
know of Blade.
you're not a science fiction boy. Okay, so there's
I
this
am. I just don't know this one.
Oh my God. Well, yes. Never mind. One of another book that Philip K. Dick has is called Ubik, and it's this future in which people die, but we keep their consciousness, and it's like it's a comedy. It's a comedy, and you can go, like, I don't know. I can go and have a huge acid trip with my great great grandma, and I can ask her about, hey, what do you think? I'm dating this guy. What do you think? Do you think it is worth it and stuff like that? I'm extrapolated to an extreme rate. Like if there
Yeah,
are
yeah, of course.
science fiction people watching, I apologize because I know
But
you
I feel like
guys.
I mean, objectively, like at a surface level, we are already at that point in terms of we can't interact with it physically, but obviously there's these really comprehensive AI. Like for example, Joe Rogan. There's enough hours of Joe Rogan that you could put into a GPT, and for the rest of time, because there's so many thousands, tens of thousands of hours of minutes, sorry, of him talking, you can get a really, really accurate vocal model, but also mental model of him in a GPT. And like his family could ask him, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And you'd get like a non-physical but auditory response that would be uncanny, I'd imagine.
Yes,
That already exists, doesn't it?
but even you cloned yourself on YouTube and on Instagram. There's jigs all over the place. But what
Everywhere.
what I'm trying to say is that the next step, the next logical step of this is to um, ex- extract the core values of Jake. And when you extract the core values of Jake, then it's the time when Jake can have a software, Jake can have an app, a mindset app like a meditation or fitness app, a mental fitness app. And like he slowly but surely detaches from this thing. And then people don't really know
Yeah.
this thing because of Jake, but they know this thing because of the results and because of the core values that that thing has.
Yeah. I suppose the example there is BetterHelp would have been very heavily linked to the founder initially. And then now I don't even know who the founder is.
Exactly. And there's so many cases of this as
Okay.
well. The guys
Um,
with Airbnb, I don't even know who those
yeah.
guys were, but at one point they
Yeah.
were the stars of the show.
Mhm. Okay, cool. So, and I think this is where you were talking about escape velocity, weren't you? You know, and I suppose that is when it reaches a perfect example, actually, is, you know, people that don't even realize that you are the author or the founder or the creator of the product because it's gained so much traction and so much, and people only have the ability to have such a surface level understanding. You know, there'll be people that don't know somehow that Alex Hormozy is the founder of acquisition.com, for example. And they'll just know of acquisition. I mean, terrible example because he's very, very well known. Um,
I will
but
give you another example, which it's insane. So Beast Games and Beast Enterprises, Mr. Beast,
yeah,
Jimmy. So Jimmy has, at this point, Jimmy's huge company is valued at 5.2 billion. He has C-suite executives for that thing. He has four verticals for business, like obviously the media
media,
company is like 50% of the thing, and then he has the feastables, and they're experimenting with other things
which are
as well.
fantastic, by the way. I absolutely love Feastables. I got onto it because he went on the Diary of a CEO, and I watched that on Behind the Diary. I don't watch Diary of a CEO's like actual episodes, but the Behind the Diary is fantastic. But yeah, Feastables, I was very pleasantly surprised, and it's the only, isn't it the only chocolate brand in the world that is 100%? Yeah, and I think that's such a
Let's tell the
no-brainer.
people what it is, because it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, I'm getting diverted, but anyway, yeah. So he's got Feastables, which is his chocolate brand. He's got a really, really good chocolate brand. Like I really like it genuinely.
But most importantly, it's the biggest ethically sourced chocolate in the world, because chocolate specifically as a industry has a lot of child exploitation. And he says in an interview that he would go and say, "Oh, these children are 10 years old," and the farmers go like, "Yeah, is there any way
It's
I
great.
can
We
pay
don't pay
more
them that
for
much. Yeah,
is there
yeah,
any way I can pay you more to not have children on the supply chain?" Maybe, because
yeah,
the margin, the da 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 da, and oh my God! So that itself, the fact that it's just the Mr. Beast way. This is it's a complete tangent, but it's the Beast way of what doing well by doing good. You
yeah.
know?
And
Oh my God!
it's
So I love that.
yeah, it's not dissimilar to Tony Robbins. People don't understand that he's fed, he's fed like literally billions of people, billions of meals. Sorry, and I think he's fed enough people to feed the population of Australia like 20 times over.
Oh my
It's
God! I didn't know
ridiculous. I
that.
mean, Australia is not massively populous, but it's still like half a million, half a billion people. It's probably a lot of the same people that he's fed, but yeah, it's over like the last 20 years or something like that. It's ridiculous.
It's allowed
Anyway, yeah.
because they get hungry again. It's allowed to
Yeah,
have
true. I
repeats
mean,
in the
to be
case of
fair,
Jake.
like you could feed one person 365 days a year and you'd still need to feed them two more times a day, you know?
Yes, exactly. And then
So,
tomorrow comes and so on.
yeah,
And they grow up.
it's a tricky issue to solve.
Yes.
But yeah, I do love that ethos of doing good by doing good. I think, to be fair, like I think that's at the heart of what I believe this natural progression of the gig economy can be, is that, and I personally am very staunch on that. I won't work with a business if I don't believe in the output, the impact of the model. For example, gambling websites. I'm sure there's huge, vast swathes of money in them. I think they're deplorable. So I'll never work with one or be sponsored by one. I don't believe in gambling and like things like that. So yeah. Anyway,
That is
sorry.
your core value. No, it's very important. That is your core value. But going back to the Mr. Beast example, he said at one point, he said they have Beast games now, and they've decided to stream Beast games not on YouTube but on Amazon, because they said this is a series, and on YouTube people don't really commit to watching a series like they do on streaming platforms and stuff. And we're trying to get to I think it was a strategy to get to like target older people who watch TV and they don't know what the YouTube and stuff, but would totally binge a show. And he said at one point he would meet people going like, "Oh yeah, I love you from these games," and he said, "Cool, do you know me from YouTube?" And they would go like 50-year-olds, "I didn't know you have a YouTube channel."
So crazy. And it's even so much as, I think the most extreme example of this probably is Meta, because a significant portion of the human population uses a Meta product. Like I'd probably say off the top of my head that must be the most extreme example. Like, a third of the world's population or a quarter of the world's population actively had or have had an account on a Meta platform. If we encompass them all, because obviously you've got different age demographics. But even so, even Mr. Beast, like obviously the fact that 1 in 10 people would have well, 1 in 10 human beings will have like watched one video, like a video that he did or something like that, or have seen him on YouTube, something like that. You've always got another 100% increase multiple times over. I just think it's
Yes.
crazy when you get to that scale, and I always think this, and I use this as an example. When people are talking about their market cap, how many people can use their product. I'm just like, there is effectively, for any company that isn't operating in the billions, there's effectively an infinite amount of clients, customers, and money out there. That's kind of a loose belief of mine.
That's a beautiful thing. That is an absolutely beautiful thing, don't you think? Because it doesn't mean now like the ideas and the innovations are no longer constrained on the market. It's like, how can you solve? You have to solve somebody's problem. You have to solve somebody's problem. There's an infinite amount of problems that you can solve, and
Yeah,
anybody can know. Who needs to know about this will
yeah.
know about this. It's fine. This is no longer a constraint. I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing, I have to
And
say.
people create their own niches all the time. I mean, keeping it to YouTube, the Outdoor Boys YouTube, which you may or may not have heard of, he literally created a genre of YouTube, and he became i- impossibly successful. Like millions and millions and millions of viewers, like cult following around the world. Never sold to his audience once, and he created a niche out of nothing, out of a hobby. You know, So 100%. Matt Armstrong, another YouTube example. Again, I'm gravitating towards YouTube with the thread of this conversation, but I wouldn't say created, I suppose he did. He created a genre of people who wanted to see cool cars getting renovated, but they bought into his personal journey. And I actually think he unintentionally adopted the petrolhead community from Top Gear and the Grand Tour into his channel. And, in the limited amount of time that I have in the week to watch, recreational stuff, I will pretty much always, have time to watch Matt Armstrong's videos every other week, and I watch it like a series. But anyway, we digress. Sorry. Coming
Because
back to,
it's not about the cars, it's about it's a story. So that is his hero's journey, and people want to see the stories of other people. Of course, it's
yeah.
beautiful. You
hmm
know, I think it's
So,
absolutely beautiful. Yes.
yeah. Where did we get to in terms of
I'm
modular?
sorry, how to sell. Yes. So basically, but the thing is, you can sell absolutely any business. Okay,
hmm
you can sell absolutely any business to anybody. The only thing that varies is the buyer and the price. I think Sam Ovens said this at one point, and this is entirely true. But in order for that business to actually, to people to actually want to buy that business, everything has to be put in place. So there needs to be a proper customer acquisition of any sort there. all you have to do is to demonstrate the fact that you can keep the monthly recurring revenue, and it doesn't have to be even that big either. But there's already standardized mechanisms for this, so even if your customer acquisition sucks, it's not a problem. Like, there's somebody that's going to fix that,
Yeah.
but the fundamental thing is that you have proven that the idea is, first of all, you executed on the idea, and you found a customer base. There's somebody who's willing to vote with their money on that thing, and the rest is just things that you have to build. That's it.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
remember somebody asking Alex Hormozy on one of those. I feel those are like people go to Mecca, or people go to Hormozy, go to see Hormozy, And I remember seeing a person um, asking. He said that he had two businesses, and one was profitable and one was not. And the one that wasn't profitable was an e-com business. And he was asking Alex, "So should I sell this business?" And Alex said, "Well, do you have a proper brand for it? Because it's running at a loss." No, not really. No, you can just pull the plug on that business, because that business it's not profitable. Okay, there can be businesses that are not profitable, but the thing is, in the case of e-com, you buy the brand, you don't buy the infrastructure, because anybody can replicate an e-com infrastructure.
Yeah.
And this is the case, like, for the natures of the business. So an e-com business really needs to have a proper brand, and a brick and mortar business, well, those all, because they're brick and mortar, and here I'm referring to like a notary public, or a laundromat, or these things that are absolutely unavoidable during our lifetime. Those are physical, and their moat is that you really need to go there, and they address the physical market in that place, but they're part of your life in a society. You need to
Hmm.
go there. Those are the businesses that you could totally that PEs really like to buy, like PE funds really like to buy, because those are forever. They're unexciting, but they are forever.
Like a funeral
And
directors.
like, oh, what do you mean? Of course, I would love to have a business like that. What are you talking
Yeah, I mean
about?
that's the first one that came to mind. I mean, we're literally all headed there eventually. But yeah,
Yes,
okay, I get what you mean. But it's interesting because obviously there's an like, I suppose, doctors' offices. There's less
totally
of them now, but the hospitals. Okay, cool, I understand. So brick and mortar doesn't necessarily have to be. It doesn't have
exciting.
to. Yeah, it could be. So, for example, a gym is somewhere in the middle where, like, it's a growing market. However, people could go to any other gym type thing.
There's so many billionaires that have made their billions because of the fact that they started just one gym, or just one specific type of workout. It was maybe one calisthenics
True.
type of
Yeah.
something, and then they gathered investors. And this is what the achieving escape velocity means. They convinced investors from very early stages that, look, this thing can give results to the people who join our gym. All we need is some money to make like 5 gyms of this type. And they go like, okay. And then they have five, and then they've proven, hey, look, we got this money, and these 5 gyms work. Let's pour some more cash on this thing.
Got
No
you.
problem.
Yeah, I get that. And okay, cool. So that's really helpful, by the way. Like, I think a good analogy for this may be that if you think of a business, like any company, any business, as a ship. They're different types of ship. You could have a teeny little inflatable fucking dinghy. It, if it stays afloat, it is technically worth money. Whether someone's going to buy it or not is a very different question. And then
Whether
all
you can
scaling,
sell it, whether you can
yeah,
sell it, because somebody can buy it, but you have to be able to sell it.
sell it, yeah. And you have to be able to prove that it can stay afloat without you in there bailing. I think that's a good analogy. Okay. And then
Yes.
that can scale all the way forwards to these huge mega yachts, which come with crews that are attached to the thing, and you
And the
sell it with
helicopter
the
port.
crew. And the helicopter, like the Wolf of Wall Street. And it is just truly about whether you have a vehicle that you can sell and someone is willing to buy, and then it's just a case of cost, right?
Yes, and it's the vision that the buyer has as well, because in the case of an online business that has a little bit of coaching and maybe like a course and whatever, it has an addressable market that, because maybe it's evergreen. Let's say it's wealth. It's how to make money I don't know, how to make money online, how to trade, for example. That's always going to be up there. That's an evergreen product. It's an evergreen transformation. And so you can totally buy it from somebody who builds a business like this. And then you can do whatever you want with it. You can go to the next level, for example, and then you can offer paid subscriptions. Or you can offer like in like physical meetings. Like this can be like a huge inner circle thing. It can start having a publication. Like you can go in so many directions with this, and usually you go in the directions in which you already have like that horizontal integration that I was referring to. So it can either be like a publication, or it can either be subscription based if you already have cheap software engineers on that, or you can pair it with like a hospitality, and it can be like a collab with the Four Seasons hotels, and you do these things in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so for example, let me think. PwC, their legal arm, may want to acquire Made for More, for example, because the distributed coaching that I can provide to them, they could just move in house and then absorb that, and then, or I suppose with coaching, actually, it may be something you should really keep external. But like that's an example where they could, I suppose, vertically integrate. That's a service that they use internally. So it's no different to a business hiring a recruiter as opposed to using a recruitment agency, right?
Yes, that's true, but you just gave me an absolutely beautiful idea. Like I don't know if you know this, but JP High-End Wealth Management, they've already partnered up with like hotels and concierges and things, and all you have to do is keep your money with them, and you have helicopter rides and vacations all included in that, and like tickets to the opera and whatever. You don't need to do anything because they have horizontally integrated. And in this case, yeah, JP Morgan would totally acquire. Made for more, because it's an important part. And like, let's say the big four audit like companies, they audit holding companies and whatever, they make them legit and stuff. And how about 10 years from now, because of this diamond shaped organizational structure that we were talking about, maybe this becomes the standard. Maybe mental performance coaching becomes the standard because they realize that they need this in order to make money, doing well by doing good is way more sustainable.
I'll tell you what, for anyone listening that has a mindset coaching business, we've just been given the absolute creme de la creme of a runway. You know where to go now. Okay. Thank you, by the way. I think that we kind of wound our way around the ever twisting path of that, but I actually really feel like I understand now, in terms of, because I never really understood how people actually went about saying, because I've had people that have bought and sold I've got friends who have bought and sold companies. I've got friends who have had their companies valued externally and things like that. And I've always wondered, like, how does that process even work? But that makes a huge amount of sense now. It quite literally is, you're buying, the prospect of what that could be or what it is then and there, and it's just, you're just basically buying the vehicle, and as long as that can stay afloat without you, or better yet, is a high performance machine that you just actually don't want to be on anymore, that's where people get really successful exits. Okay, cool.
Yes,
Now,
but like I would like to add this layer of I would encourage people to buy stake in each other's businesses. I think that is what would make us anti-fragile and future-proof. Like we can diversify our own wealth by having 10% of Made for More, or like another 20% of some pet groomer or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I think this actually helps us all, because to be completely honest, like me and you, we're not gonna have a retirement. We're not gonna have a pension. What is that called? And so you kind of have
yeah,
to.
yeah, pension, yeah. And I think, interestingly, that's where, I mean, I personally will lean on property. This is just where I have my most expertise. I would love to develop property in the future. It's a personal passion of mine. And again, doing good by doing good, I'd love to build good quality, well thought out, well designed, affordable housing in the UK as my philanthropic endeavors going into the future. That's something I've always wanted to do. So 100%, I'll end up doing that.
I didn't know that. That is beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
will think about this and I will come back. But like as a total side quest, but we're on tangents here. It's just because this is how people who do research. This is how
No,
researchers
no,
are. Sorry, everybody.
no,
But
no. I love it. It's I always like, this is one of my favorite things about this format. I mean, this in itself, Made for More as a podcast, that's, will eventually be its own individual media company. And interestingly, I'm bootstrapping this as a case study for later on down the line. I mean,
very
take
good.
Modern Wisdom as a brand. Obviously, it's very Chris centric. However, he can't completely exit that, but he could absolutely sell stakes in that with its ability to produce revenue and things like that. So I
He
can
can
really
start.
understand.
He can start and replace himself. Like Mr. Beast has what 5 channels at this point, and there's some episodes in which he doesn't even appear.
It's a good point. Yeah,
So
I suppose if the
it,
content speaks for itself, Stephen Bartlett's done that, really, isn't he? By with Flight Story, because their Flight Story, he's providing a very similar type of entertainment, sorry, a very similar type of media, but with different hosts. That's a really, obviously the Diary CEO will always be his little, his baby. And his personal brand is probably one of the stronger ones. But yeah, that's a really good point. As a whole, the whole company is what, like north of $400 million again. So really interesting point. Where was I going with that?
I would like
Come
to
on,
add
brain.
Veritasium. Do you know the channel Veritasium? You know that
Mm,
channel? It's sort of a
rings a
Vsauce.
bell.
So there's multiple hosts on that, and it doesn't even matter anymore because it's not about the host; it's about the science.
Oh, okay. Think Media is, I suppose, another one.
Think, yes,
Yeah, they have a cycling. Yeah, there's loads of entertainment. Actually, yeah, now that you talk about it, it's just a case of how you do it and like understanding that you're going to take a bit of a hit. But like there's multiple media channels that have started to do that. That's a really good point. This has really opened my eyes to like what the eventual possibilities of these things are. Yeah, it's literally like the Jamie Oliver brand, for example, is a brand in of itself. Publications, blogs, the Points Guy, that's a company and a brand of like not just him anymore. Yeah, really, really interesting. It just, I suppose it's all dependent on your desire to build um, beneath you and kind of replace yourself, which, yeah, that's really, really interesting.
exactly.
It's
To
just the
build
next
beneath
natural
you.
progression to having people do the work for you on your behalf is just literally doing the work together and then people realizing that it's not just you. So, yeah, that's, and I suppose your ownership of the leads and the lead generation and the data and things like that will fall into it. Anyway, we I was going to ask you something and it's escaping me now. What were we talking about before? I was talking about the Made for More as a media brand.
You've mentioned something really beautiful about the fact that one of the philanthropic things you would like to do in this lifetime is build houses,
Yeah, that was it.
which I think.
Retirement. I'm just, thank you. I'm backtracking. So we were talking about retirement. Yes,
Wait,
owning equity. So I know something yeah, there we go. I'm really glad we managed to get it back. I hate it when I lose the tangent, the stream of thought. So I know you're a huge fan of diversification in terms of a portfolio, whether that's on an individual level, with your time at Vanguard, or whether it's, as you were just saying, having a widely spread portfolio. So how can someone go about actually diversifying when they're just starting out? So say you're just starting out, you work a job that you get paid for. How can you start diversifying your wealth, I guess you could say?
if you're a person who is just earning a salary and the salary is fixed, there is the very old book from 1926 called The Richest Man in Babylon. I think
I love
lesson
that book.
one, I love that
Yeah,
book too.
yeah.
Lesson one is pay yourself first. And few people actually pay themselves first. This means to just take like 10% of whatever you're making every month and just put it aside. And the easiest way to do that is it could be a savings account with an interest rate. And you will realize that at one point you'll have some money in there. you're going to have like 10K. I don't know. You're gonna have like it's gonna be some money because you forget about it and then you go, holy crap, there's some money in here.
Yeah.
And I know there's it's the S&P 500. That is a it's it's an index fund, and so it has everything in it, so it only grows and stuff, but it grows at a 10% annual return rate, which is, it's great. It's no problem. But the I guess the level of liquidity is what we're looking for. So, to what extent this investor rationale? My portfolio manager taught me this actually a little bit later. My time at Vanguard was more about learning about liquidity, but at one point I had a portfolio manager, and I was asking her, so what do we do? Do we do real estate? Do we do da, 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 da?" And she said, well, this really depends on what your plans are with your life. Like, what do you want to do these next 12 months? What do you want to do these next 5 years? Like, do you want to move someplace? Do you want to? And so these are really dependent on your dreams, and that's why we have vision boards. That's why we have to do journaling exercises to know what we want and what we do not want. You mentioned that you want to consolidate in physical assets and like real estate and stuff. I do not like those very much, but that's just a personal thing. If my dad hears this, he's gonna go ape shit. He doesn't like this because he only believes in the real estate. I don't like the real estate that much because I've noticed that historically it doesn't really keep up. Like if you're thinking of it as an asset, it doesn't even hold up with the inflation, and like the MRO cost, the maintenance and repair costs supersede any type of wins that you can have. Like, yeah, of course, maybe you can rent that out, but if you live in it, you're gonna be at a loss. Anyway, do journaling exercises, do inner journey exercises, figure out what your ideal lifestyle is, and then that means a certain level of liquidity. A certain level of liquidity means some stocks, some bonds, which are not that liquid because it's pointless to liquidate those before term. Maybe it means some real estate as well, but certainly it means some stake in the business. So I guess the highest liquidity rate that you could have is like either having stake in businesses that are publicly traded or having stake in companies that are private.
Hmm. Okay.
That's the highest level of liquidity. Yes.
Okay. And then you've got commodities as well, like physical gold or trading on gold. I
Yes,
mean,
or trading on gold.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, and that's at the kind of, I suppose that principle just scales all the way up, as a
Yes.
percentage, just continue to reinvest into different things that hopefully grow on average. And then when you get to a place of stability where you know that you're looked after in the future, or even, if you want to do high risk, high reward, you
The
can
thing
kind of,
is, it's only gonna go up. So your little 10%, your tithe to yourself, it's only gonna go up. Like it's not gonna do anything if it's just cash. Like maybe it can have an interest rate on a deposit, which is great, but like it's only gonna go up if it's invested in any type of asset, seriously. But some of them are a little more volatile, but overall, long term, they only go up.
hmm,
It's fine. It just depends on when you need that money.
yeah. True. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's interesting actually because up until, I mean, it might average out over the next 100 years from this, but up until about 8 years ago, on average, averaged over a century, London real estate, I believe, goes up 2% a year, adjusted for inflation, and that has been a
Oh,
reoccurring trend. Yeah, that's been a reoccurring trend for literally like, well, you've got multiple centuries of data, but so far it seems like that trend's been broken, at least in the 21st century. So I guess we're only a quarter of the way into it, but it would be curious to see, um, you know, what that does. But it's an interesting thing. What's curious actually is I love real estate because unlike most other assets, it gives you something that the value might fluctuate. There might be a downturn in the market, but at least you've got something that's usable. And I think having at least one property that you own is a massive psychological asset as well. But no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's hard to disagree with having a diversified portfolio. You know, not putting all your eggs in one basket is a saying for a reason. Okay, I think that there was so much more I wanted to cover, but I think it'd be curious to, you know, start to touch on a little bit about your past. I suppose we're kind of teasing it before you come on again in the future. But I've heard you say that lazy people make good problem solvers, kind of self-deferentially when you were talking about yourself. Well, do you truly believe that?
I truly believe that, but it's not my idea. I've had a math tutor. So I've had a math tutor at one point. He said, I know you're not going to do your homework. I know you're going to have like terrible, you're going to have a terrible work ethic, and we're not going to do proper collaborations because smart people, I know they're very lazy. So I'll tell you what, we're going to do different types of exercises with you. We're gonna do these a little more advanced ones that don't require you just calculating on pages and pages. We're gonna do proper calculus and like we're gonna do statistics and stuff like that. How's that sound? I'm like, cool. So, and he was the one who identified like the smarter the people are, the lazier they are because they just find ways to conserve energy, you know,
Yeah.
because that's the main purpose of this body, and like this brain is like our highest consumer, like it needs most of our energy, and so it tries to figure out ways for us to, you know, not have to work too much.
Do you think that's more of a mindset thing as opposed to, because I think we both will know, and anecdotally know of people that just kind of kick the trash around, uh, because that's, ultimately what they're paid to do. I mean, I think a lot of people get labeled with that when you have a paid salary job, is that things will just end up taking, 3 times longer because you're not incentivized to do it quicker. Do you think that's more of a mindset though?
Oh, I'm certain that that's a mindset thing, but you've taught me, because you are a holistic coach, you taught me that that has something to do with the brain itself. Because we, at one point, we we kind of have a sense of reward when we do certain things, and we become addicted to these thought patterns. Like, of course, because they're the easiest thought. But can you please explain this? But I think that being either lazy or being an overthinker or being any types of these things. I don't know if they're related to mindset particularly, but I know that they're actually a consequence of neuroplasticity, I think, right? Please, you
Yeah,
tell
and
me.
it basically boils down to the fact that, when we are overthinking, it feels like you're doing the right kind of thing because it's rewarding the thought process as opposed to the outcome. Because as most people know, if you're trying to do anything difficult, it doesn't feel good. If you are sat maybe a lot of people wouldn't have, well, most listeners won't have written a book, but when you sit down to write anything, whether it's an essay, an Instagram post, um, a card is probably a more applicable example to most people, but certainly a book. It feels uncomfortable having to um, dial your level of focus and concentration to such a fine point that you're able to then cross that, um, I suppose escape velocity between concentration and output. And then you start to get into the flow of things. But the anticipation ahead of doing that, it's difficult because your brain wants to stay in kind of the lowest energy state possible. So a lot of the time, something that's fairly low energy is just thinking about the thing, and it actually vies for the same resources as doing the thing. So we get addicted to this cycle of, thinking about the thing as opposed to doing it because it doesn't cross that threshold of having to actually expend energy. And for all we know, it feels like we're actually producing an output or at least moving the needle forwards by thinking about it. And then you get this horrible car crash into the wall of, oh my God, I've produced nothing. And the deadline is tomorrow. ADHDers will typically know this, where you just do all of a sudden, all at once, because the pain of not, producing outweighs the discomfort of doing. I think that's probably the simplest way I can surmise that.
That
But I
is
think,
so eloquently put.
thank you. And I think because when we first started speaking, I think not on this podcast, but previously, you kind of branded yourself as lazy, and I now understand it's not in a derogatory way. It's in a kind of a modality or an efficiency way of thinking. And actually, what I see that as is you kind of have an impatience, I guess it would be a good way to say, an impatience for the outcome. So you're willing to just connect the dots in a different way, problem solve, optimizing for efficiency as opposed to the work. But I think obviously it was very good to put the question back onto me, but I would definitely say that quote unquote lazy people do make good problem solvers, because you value output and efficiency over necessarily the thinking about the process too much. And you're a perfect example of this, actually, because obviously you are an author, and I'd love to talk about your book real quick, but so many people don't realize the real journey that you go through when you're writing books. It's such an incredible life's accomplishment. And I personally know so many authors who that has been the real turning point in their career, when they realize, God, I can get my mind to something and really produce something valuable. So I'd love to talk about your book very quickly before we have to disappear.
Okay. First, I am at the complete. I'm addicted to writing books. Uh,
Okay.
I'm addicted to writing books. I thought it was from 2020 when I had to write to be accepted for the PhD program, and then I kind of every fall, every Q3 or Q4, I churn out a book. But then I looked back a little bit, and I used to do. This isn't legal, but I used to
Don't
do other
implicate yourself.
I used to do other people's research papers for money.
Ah, okay, right. It doesn't really implicate you, it implicates them. So that's cool.
I don't know. I don't know. But yes, I used to so I got so used to churning the written word every fall, every Q3, Q4, in which now if there's a year in which I don't do that, it's weird. I feel bad.
Okay.
I feel like this
And
something is wrong.
is it typically just like the flavor of the quarter, whatever you've been interested in that year?
It might be, that is a very good point, and I think it is my way of making sense of the previous 12 months, like for at least for the ones since 2020, because like in order to be accepted in the PhD program's premise was physical distancing, and I had tried to make sense of what happened in 2020 by
Hmm.
October 2020. And it was my plan to continue studying physical distancing and proxemics and economic output of buildings. And then they make you write 150 pages every year during the PhD program because you have to say, so what'd you do this year?
Yeah.
And then it was the PhD in October 2023. And then in 2024, it was a book on vacation architecture, which was actually referring to the timeless ways of design, which, it's about building houses in secluded environments, and the houses kind of look like the
The
environment
environment.
itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And indeed, this one was obviously a catharsis after improperly exiting my company and then advising other people, even before me exiting, but even after, when it actually became my main source of income. So the whole premise, this book is called The Informed Exit because I thought it would be cute, because every time people would see an exit sign, they would think of my book.
Yeah. No, and I've not had the chance to fully read it yet because I only got the edited manuscript last
Because
week.
you have a
But
child.
yeah, that too. But I've really enjoyed kind of skimming through it, and I just think I really think, and I know my audience will agree, it's such an incredible achievement to have written not just one book, obviously multiple. But so your book on the informed exit is not dissimilar to this conversation we've had. I suppose it's just a much more expanded version.
I guess it has two important parts. The introduction is I guess, a story. It's many stories with exits and stuff like that. And then we go into the four cornerstones of value creation. So what actually makes a business valuable? Because the thing is, a business itself, it doesn't exist. A business, you could say, it exists in the fourth dimension, and we just see in the third dimension the consequences of the existence of that business. Like all the operations and things, those are abstract. They don't really exist, you know what I mean? But we see where the money goes. We see the operations and where the money goes. And the thing about value creation is that, let's say the operation side of the business is in the three-dimensional world. Value creation, however, is in this higher realm. So these are where the investors are. This is where the board is, where the decisions are made of what will happen with the money here. And I think that it's almost like a spiritual thing, like proper businesses, like enterprises, venture management. That's almost like a spiritual thing. And the money indeed is just a consequence of these things.
So if I may interject, it's not too dissimilar from a customer going into a cafe, ordering food, and then magically out the kitchen they receive something that is tasty and edible. Whereas the fourth dimension beyond that is the fact that there's raw ingredients, management, chefs, heat, cold, etc.,
Supply chain, yes.
transforming. Yeah,
Yes.
it's the transformation of the thing, the supplying of the thing, and eventually having the money change hands and then the product out the other side. But say we were 6 months years 6 months 6 months old and we didn't have object permanence, we would just be
Yes.
like, wow, this
Think
thing
about
in, that thing out. Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
Yes, that is the
Okay.
perfect example, object permanence of a 6-month way, because you can play peekaboo with business
Yeah.
operations and they wouldn't
It's
understand
very
what's
front of
going on.
mind at the moment, object
Yes.
permanence, because we're
Yes.
just kind of rounding the corner of it. But anyway, cool.
Oh,
All right.
that's a beautiful stage. I'm really excited for you guys.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it links perfectly to business, apparently.
It does, because my book is supposed to be an educational book. And the reason why I wrote it, yes, I realize now I talking to it was catharsis, but ultimately it was because I was sitting in these meetings with these people who, were discussing synergies because they had some different types of businesses and how could they, align, maybe become each other's shareholders. And they had different levels of understanding what that meant, because some guy would talk about a startup and how he was in pre-seed and series A. The other guy was like, yeah, I want to make more money from my customers. And the other guy was like, yeah, I want to do more B2B. And they were just discussing, they were like on different floors of the same building. And like,
Yeah.
they need just something they need like a translator, a thing.
Yeah, you created the elevator
Yes.
that could go between them all, so they have like a common reference point. Cool.
Yes,
Okay,
I
so
felt the need to put them together.
anyone wanting to learn about how to, just really, really understand the whole process of, I suppose, buying or selling companies. Is that correct?
Totally. It's about the deals as well. So it has my book has these little stories and stuff. At the same time, it has the what value creation is and how to make it. And there are 4 cornerstones of value creation. We have revenue growth, and then we have profit margin expansion, then we have capital efficiency, which basically means making your money, making more money. And then we have leadership, which doesn't mean necessarily only inspiring the people that work in the company, but it also means doing proper deals with other companies that are based on trust. I'm going to work with Jake because I know he has integrity and he's not going to screw me over and stuff like that. Those are the 4 things that make value creation go.
And that's really interesting, by the way. Actually, I think what's nice about that 4th pillar is that it comes back to, you hear quite often, business is about relationships and people, and that's, the best deals are done over the dinner table, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But I love
Yes.
that you've included that, because it can be quite a clinical, cold thing, especially when you start talking about stock exchanges. And, you've got the whole hostile takeover option, the classic example of Netflix buying out. Was it Netflix that bought out Warner Brothers, and then
Yes.
Paramount tried to attempt kind of a coup d'etat, I guess,
Yeah.
a hostile takeover. And I wish we had more time. Just very quickly, can you explain that? Because I think that was in the headlines, and people will. I'm personally just interested to hear your take on that.
I need to say that I think it was mostly just headlines. Like I'm absolutely certain that what we didn't see was some people doing some proper deal making, because at that level, there's no way this is a reality show level spectacle. You know what I mean? But at that
Yeah.
level, like we've discussed these things, I remember reading at one point. So yes, I do not believe that it was such a hostile takeover and stuff like that. These are deals that have been discussed, but at the same time, the erratic way of communicating these deals may have also been to eliminate the speculation, so people not speculate on the markets and things, and like short or long, or like
Okay.
mess up the value of
So
everything.
it's
I think
probably a
that's
bigger, longer term ploy kind of around this.
I think so, yes. And like the same way I think who Drake and Kendrick Lamar, they had a feud. I think that's
Beef,
fake.
yeah. It's just marketing, yeah. Well, it's the
Yes.
same like any rap beef ever. Um,
Yes.
but that's so interesting. I mean, with the Netflix deal specifically, I heard a lot of people going, "Oh, I can't believe they've paid was it 82 billion or agreed to pay 82 billion for something that is cash negative." But then I
But we
thought,
don't know how the deal was made. Sorry.
yeah, well, even
The
even if
payment. It wasn't a
obviously
wire.
no, well, the Paramount deal was cash. So, but I was explaining to someone that that's not actually preferable because that's susceptible to capital gains, isn't it? Because if you sell out your shares,
Exactly.
then
I think it was a
we
leveraged buyout, sir.
100%. But also the fact that they had so much to gain from that because they now have all the IP and they're probably going to save themselves between 6 to 8. Yes, I think it'd be impossible to quantify, but like tens and tens of millions a year just in licensing fees
Yes.
for IP that is really really desirable and like stuff that can just live on Netflix now. All of the
Yes.
DC, all like Harry Potter as well. Goodness me, like I dread to think how much probably the Harry Potter IP is worth. Probably 12 to 14 billion of that just on its own. Especially with this
Exactly.
new show. Anyway, we digress. So thank you so much, by the way. And as I like to wrap up the show, I have a couple of questions. So, number one would be: is there a book for my audience? Is there a book or a piece of media? One specifically, can be maybe more than one, that has really, really impacted you and your career.
I have to say yes. It was not my career necessarily, but specifically this leadership part, tackling the leadership part and putting it in my book, which is actually about equity. It's Henry Kissinger, Leadership.
Nice.
Like I think it's the last one before he died, maybe 2022 or 2023, and it's a beautiful story. There's like 6 case studies with some great leaders. They're not like super famous leaders, but they were leaders of countries when the country was going through a huge transition, and there you could see the leadership and the partnership between these big leaders and other big leaders and how they helped each other, specifically because there was this level of trust, like the
Which is a
importance of the deal.
wonderful metaphor for everything that you've just been talking about today. So yeah, I love that. Any more? Because I know you're a huge reader.
I don't know. I don't know. Now I'm scared at this.
It's okay, don't worry. If nothing comes to mind, then that's absolutely fine. And otherwise, I have a tradition that I borrowed from the Diary of a CEO, where I have previous guests leave questions for future guests, and they're not chronological. So I have a question from a previous guest. So, do you feel like you're solving the biggest problem available to you now?
What a beautiful question. I
Good
think
question, right?
yes. I think yes, I am because, and then I know what to ask the next person. Because like Morpheus said, I am who I am, not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. So I'm able to help these businesses with a combination of theory and practice. And the deal making, yes, I've seen it from like public tendering and the family company as well, but mostly because I was making deals with people supplying me materials and like with clients and other subcontractors for the fabrication business, because delivery was delivery. And what I want to say is that I have granted myself permission to serve businesses. I don't know, for the transformation to have a higher impact, the same way you did. Like you've granted yourself permission to have higher impact with all these things that like all your skill set. So yes, I think so.
Yeah, you've given yourself kind of runway to believe that obviously you can have greater impact and to have that greater impact. I think that's wonderful. And hold your question, by the way. I'll ask you after we jump off. But honestly, Serena, thank you so much. This has been honestly fascinating for me. I think the audience will probably suss out the fact that this was very much just a conversation that I was interested to have, and I tried to guide in a way that would answer questions that people may have as they came up. But I'd definitely love to have you on again to talk more about your journey, because I think it was literally incredible. Obviously, we scratched over the surface of your PhD, but where can people go to find you? Where can they find the book?
Oh, it's on my website. Oh my God. So it's just serenadumitru.com, and like it's very easy to navigate, and it goes directly to the book. Thank you very much. Thank you
Do you want
for
me
the
to put that in
shout.
the description of the video?
Sure. Yes, I will give
Yeah,
you a
sure.
link.
Okay,
Thank you. I
I will
haven't
do.
really thought
And
about that. Yes.
yeah, no worries at all. You're most welcome. So Sorena Dumitru on socials, and what is it on Instagram? The main one.
Serena Dumitru, PhD. It's the PhD at the end. My
Okay.
marketing team told me that it's important to tell everybody that I'm a doctor.
I mean, it is, yeah. It's just, I heard someone I'm yet to have on the show said that it allows you to add an extra zero to whatever you're talking about, which I find is quite funny and novel. But no, it's something I really like massively respect, just because obviously it's an aspiration of mine. We've discussed this to go off and do a PhD, and I just think that the level of dedication and the time that you pour into it deserves recognition in that thing. But anyway, you were an absolute delight to have on the show. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you
And
for having me.
yeah, I look forward to having you again.
Next time is going to be PhD. We're going to talk about research.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you.
Thank you for
Cool.
having me.